Greetings, friends. This October 21st is Canada's federal election, and I'm going to vote for the People's Party of Canada, led by Maxime Bernier. I will vote for them if they're on my ballot. I'm not much of an expert, so I don't know if they're actually going to be fielding a candidate where I live. Certainly, if they did, they're not going to win, so it's not going to make much of a difference. But if they are on the ballot, I will vote for them. So this video is going to be showing you why I'm going to vote for them. If they're not on the ballot, I'm just going to try and spoil the ballot, because I don't see much of a difference between any of the federal people who are running for Prime Minister. Justin Trudeau is obviously awful, but Andrew Scheer, the leader of the Conservatives, is really the same. I mean, he claims to be pro-life. They make certain stances which are against the Liberals, but they're all basically the same. Jagmeet Singh with his orange turban and his huge beard. Elizabeth May, this very, very annoying woman, leader of the Green Party. And they've got someone for the Bloc Québécois. I'm on the website here for the People's Party of Canada, which is a new party, started I think just over a year ago. Maxime Bernier was a Conservative Party member of Parliament, but then he was sort of kicked out of the party, or he left on his own. I don't really care. I'm not the most up-to-date on Canadian politics. Don't take me as an expert. I'm just giving you my 10 cents here. But anyways, he started his own party, which has some libertarian stances and some populist or nationalist stances. The biggest reason that I'm voting for them is that they openly, or I would vote for them, is that they question multiculturalism. They don't think multiculturalism is a good thing. But of course, I'm not saying they're so great. They embrace all these liberal ideals, because we all do, because we've been steeped in liberal ideals for some centuries now, ever since the Enlightenment, and then especially since the 20th century, where, equality is just something that everyone takes for granted, and, democracy itself, I'm not even sure that democracy is such a good idea, but sometimes you have to go with the flow, and you got to get things going in the right direction. So don't interpret me as saying that if by some chance in 5 to 10 years this party actually came to power and formed a majority government, that I don't necessarily mean that things would necessarily be better. But what I see on their platform is a step in the right direction. Their platform has a lot of different stuff. I'm not going to go into all of this stuff. I'm going to read some of it and just give my response to it. Public finance, I'll skip over that. Economy, encouraging investment and productivity growth. I'll just quickly read you some of that. Their plan is to eliminate all corporate subsidies. They're big on clamping down on special interest groups. That's easier said than done. When you really come to power, it's just like Obama or Trump in the US. They say they want to do certain things. In reality, who knows if they would do that. They want to gradually reduce, over the course of one mandate, the corporate income tax rate from its current 15% down to 10%. That measure will make about $9.5 billion available to businesses. Gradually abolish the personal capital gains tax by decreasing the inclusion rate from the current 50% down to 0%. And then that, they say, will put about $7 billion per year back into the pockets of Canadians. I don't really know. A lot of this, you could say, if you're not a fan of capitalism, you could say, oh, well, they're helping the big corporations. Yeah, I guess. But the idea is that the big corporations have more ability to pay taxes because they're already so big. And then the government subsidizes them. And that makes it harder for small businesses to grow. So what I want, ideally, is a level playing field. But it should be easier to get off the ground on more of a level playing field. Maybe that's a little too idealistic. The most important issues are the multiculturalism stuff, the immigration. Some of the stuff they say overlaps when they talk about this Canadian identity, ending official multiculturalism and preserving Canadian values and culture. That overlaps a bit with the refugee policy, ending open borders, ending open borders policies and prioritizing persecuted groups, and then immigration, reducing overall levels and prioritizing skilled immigrants. So let me just quickly look at the Canadian identity. I'm going to read some of what they say. A nation must be based on a sense of belonging, participation in a common national project, sharing the same values. Well, yeah, ideally, although Canada is a bicultural nation originally, English and French. I mean, if you want to include the First Nations, then that's yet another complication there. So we've never really been a very coherent nation, but, technically that's true. And then they say in the past, immigrants who came to Canada gradually integrated into our society. They did, of course, keep some of the aspects of the culture of their origin. They became Canadian. And then so they say that's the good kind of multiculturalism. Okay, I mean, yeah, I guess. But it's still a good idea to assimilate. You'll have a better functioning society, I think. Because what's the point then? Why not just have a separate country? So I don't need to read all of this. He says here, with his cult of diversity, Justin Trudeau has pushed this ideology even further into a form of extreme multiculturalism. He described Canada as the first post-national state with no core identity. Indeed, he did. In a free society, immigrants have the right to cherish and maintain their cultural heritage. However, that doesn't mean we have any obligation to help them preserve it with government programs and taxpayers' money. The vast majority of Canadians rightly expect them to learn about our history and culture, master one of our official languages, and adopt widely shared Canadian values. Although, what are the Canadian values? What are they? It's undefined. That's a problem. That's why you need something like a Christian moral framework, but no one wants to say that because that's not going to get them enough votes, so that's understandable. But if you just say widely shared Canadian values, then those are undefined. So that's not really going to help you either. What, you just love freedom, or you love you love democracy so much? What are Canadian values? And then they say Canada is and always has been a diverse country. We have First Nations, blah, 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 Inuit, multi-ethnic population. Yeah, it's always been very diverse. Okay, so they do define the values here. They say our values are those of a contemporary Western civilization. This includes democracy, individual rights and freedoms, including freedom of religious belief and freedom to criticize religion, equality between men and women, the equal treatment of all citizens regardless of ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation, the rule of law, separation of state and religion, tolerance and pluralism, and loyalty to the wider society instead of to one's clan or tribe. Well, to be honest, I don't know. I don't even really, democracy, that's very liberal. I mean, obviously this is an election, so democracy. Individual rights and freedoms. Oh, yeah, all right, okay. I can get high more easily now. I mean, not really. I mean, I can go buy it in a dispensary, but I could still get it before. But now the government's getting presumably more tax money from that. So, but individual freedoms don't. I mean, what about the whole LGBT thing? That's out of control. That's more individual freedoms. Equality between men and women, but men and women are not equal. They're not the same. They have different brains. They have different behaviors. Feminism has been a very destructive force. The main idea for feminism was increasing the number of taxpayers so that corporations could have, government could have more taxpayers and corporations could have more workers and pay them less. The equal treatment of all citizens regardless of ethnicity, religion, or sex. But what if you've got radical Muslims coming in? Well then, I guess they would say, they don't fit Canadian values. But then how do you get to decide when it becomes a radical Muslim or not? I mean, when they start blowing stuff up, it's still a different culture. It's still going to lead to polarization. So tolerance and pluralism. So you see, this is the problem with libertarianism. They try to be more liberal than even the left, but then that doesn't work in the long run. Because the left, I don't like them, but they embrace identity politics. The nationalists embrace identity politics because that's natural, that's history, that's nature. Libertarians try to overlook that stuff and say, oh, we can just have loyalty to the wider society instead of to one's clan or tribe. So their plan, this is the important stuff, is to repeal the Multiculturalism Act and eliminate all funding to promote multiculturalism. That's good, I agree. And then they should emphasize instead the integration of immigrants into Canadian society. Substantially lower the total number of immigrants and refugees Canada accepts every year from 350,000 to between 100 to 150,000. This is in a country of a population of roughly 37 million, I think, right now. So you may be saying, well, that's too much. 150,000 or 100,000 is still too much. I agree. I guess it may still be too much, but it's a step in the right direction. They're the only party I've seen that is, questioning mass immigration. Are you getting anything like this from the conservatives? No, nothing like that. The conservatives are only conservative in name. Andrew Scheer is a weak man. He looks like a cuck. He sounds like a cuck. Almost as bad as Justin Trudeau. And then finally, their plan is to ensure that every candidate for immigration undergoes a face-to-face interview, answers specific questions to see how they align with Canadian values and societal norms. And by that, they mean all that liberal enlightenment stuff that we just read there. Very vague stuff. But it's not a bad idea. I mean, I guess you could keep out some of the radical Muslims. You could keep out, radical Marxists? There's not even that many people like that. It's mainly a religious thing. But what about, you see, it's not just a Muslim thing. It's like, what about all the Sikhs coming into the country? What about all the Hindus coming into the country? What about all the Asians coming into the country? I don't see why they would have a problem passing the interview. They'd be like, oh yeah, we rule of law, all this stuff. It's individual rights. Yeah, it's great. But then they're still going to polarize the country into different ethnic communities. And then they're trying to celebrate, or they're trying to say it was okay. Multiculturalism in a certain context was okay in the past. And to an extent it was all right because it was all coming from Europe. But that doesn't mean it made Canada stronger. It just meant that the differences weren't so great that we were able to achieve a minimum level of assimilation. Whereas that's very difficult today. So that's the main point I wanted to look at. Let's just go over some of these other points in their platform. Again, this is related. The refugee thing, the Liberals under Trudeau, they've done nothing to stop the flow of tens of thousands of asylum seekers illegally crossing our borders, and these cost billions of dollars to the taxpayers. The UN's Global Compact for Migration, which the Liberal government signed last year, aims to normalize this kind of situation, and it will make it easier for millions of people to move to Canada. Since early 2017, more than 45,000 migrants have illegally entered Canada, mainly at Roxham Road in Quebec, or Quebec as I should say. I don't know why I say Quebec. So they avoid the border checkpoints where they would be turned away, and then 40% of their refugee claims which are processed are rejected, and then that costs more money to deport them. Apparently it costs about $14,000 for each asylum seeker who crosses Canada outside of official border points. So that's a huge cost, many millions of dollars to the taxpayers. So their plan is to accept fewer resettled refugees, take every measure necessary to stop the flow of illegal migrants, declare the whole border an official point of entry for the purposes of refugee claims, to send back to the U.S. anyone trying to enter Canada illegally, fence off areas where illegal border jumping is prevalent, rely on private sponsorships instead of having the government pay for all the costs of resettling refugees, stop our reliance on the UN for refugee selection. That's good. The UN is just a big globalist organization. It doesn't really care about the average person. It doesn't care about preserving nations. It certainly doesn't care about preserving Western civilization. And then they want to give priority to persecuted groups who have nowhere to go, like Christians, Yazidis, other minority religions in majority Muslim countries. I don't know much about, all those different groups. And then they want to take Canada out of UN's Global Compact for Migration. So yeah, good enough for me. I mean, it's moving in the right direction. I mean, I have to skip over most of these ideas because there's too much. I don't want this video to go on for. It's already going to be a long video, but pipelines, they want to get the pipeline going. Let's see what they have to say. Freedom of expression, protecting Canadians from censorship and discrimination. The rights of Canadians to freely hold and express beliefs are being eroded at an alarming speed under the Trudeau government. Some of its recent decisions even require that Canadians renounce their most deeply held moral convictions and express opinions they disagree with. The Liberal government has denied summer job funding to organizations, including charities, that would not sign an attestation supporting abortion. It also passed Bill C-16 as part of a trend to force Canadians to express support for the existence of various gender identities beyond male and female, and to use their pronouns. We've heard of all this. This is what Jordan Peterson originally rose to fame, challenging and articulating an argument against, because it was easy. The numbers of these people that want these pronouns are very small. Peterson would never take a big stand like to question multiculturalism itself. He's an individualist. Yeah, they're just talking about these assaults on conscience. Then they talk about Motion M103, which condemns religious discrimination, but only specifically mentions one religion, Islam, without defining the term Islamophobia. This is what the Liberals did. And then they say on university campuses, more faculty and administrators have become aggressive advocates for censorship. Okay, fine. And then they say the facts are that history and social scientific research show that freedom of conscience and freedom of expression, when maximally protected, advance the intellectual life of a nation, foster greater ideological diversity and societal understanding, and nurture other freedoms. I don't know. That's very vague. I mean, actually, we hear a lot on YouTube about how free speech is a good thing. And to be honest, the left is censoring all of the conservatives and the right-wing people. But if we were in power, would we really want all of these crazy left-wing views to get out? Do we really have that much confidence that the average person is not going to be indoctrinated? I don't know. I mean, free speech is something that sounds nice, but I mean, maybe there's like a happy medium, so where you can have, I mean, how do you define the boundaries? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Ideally, free speech would work well in a more ethnically homogeneous society. But once you start bringing in other cultures, then your free speech just becomes interpreted as an attack on another group. And so I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical about the whole idea of championing free speech as this wonderful thing, even though it's being used to crack down on us. Because we know that most people are pretty dumb. Most people are indoctrinated very easily. Just look at the left. Look at all the environmentalist cult. Look at all the social justice cult. Really degenerate stuff going on in our society. Obviously, some things should be censored, and therefore you can't really believe in free speech. But anyway, so their plan is to restrict the definition of hate speech in the criminal code to expression which advocates the use of force against identifiable groups or persons on protected criteria. Yeah, well, I mean, it's good. The whole hate speech thing is not in our favor. That's I agree with that. So the hate speech thing is just like, don't say nationalist or conservative things. So if they want to repeal that, then that's good for us. Repeal any existing legislation curtailing free speech on the internet. Yeah, that would be good for us. But then do we want to censor them later on? Censor the left? I mean, ideally we don't want to do that, but you never know. They want to repeal C-16 and M103, blah, blah, blah. So, then, there's the idea. At least it's good that they're aware of this situation and they're giving it public expression. Global warming and environment. Rejecting alarmism and focusing on concrete improvements. As they say, the Liberal government is spending billions of dollars at home and abroad to fight global warming, or climate change as it is now called, to account for every natural weather event and its opposite. In order to lower greenhouse gas emissions, it's imposed taxes, countless regulations, it subsidizes inefficient and costly green technology, and it's blocking the development of oil resources crucial to our prosperity. It's an undisputed fact that the world's climate has always changed and will continue to change. Up until 12,000 years ago, much of Canada was under ice, and it is thanks to natural climate change that we can live here today. And I agree with all of that. I've made those same points myself. I don't have any problem if the world's getting warmer for Canada. This is a cold country. I would like it to get warmer. But then they say, oh, well, it might not be warming. It might just be becoming a more violent climate with more hurricanes. And forget all of this present hysteria. It's all going to blow over. And then they say there's no scientific consensus on the theory that CO2 produced by human activity is actually dangerous. Don't believe the whole 97% of scientists believe it's a thing. It's like, no, those words have been twisted and they were government-funded scientists. The truth is much more nuanced than that. And then they say the fact is that this climate change alarmism is based on flawed models that have consistently failed. Think of Al Gore, his documentary over 15 years ago, making all these crazy predictions, which never happened. There has been no new ice age. And then, of course, CO2 is beneficial for agriculture. Plants like CO2 as well. So their plan is to withdraw from the Paris Accord and abandon unrealistic greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Stop sending billions of dollars to developing countries to help them reduce their emissions. Abolish the Liberal government's carbon tax and leave it to provincial governments to adopt programs to reduce emissions if they want to. Abolish subsidies for green technology and let private players develop profitable and efficient alternatives. Invest in adaptation strategies if problems arise as a result of any natural climate change. Prioritize implementing practical solutions to make Canada's air, water, and soil cleaner, including bringing clean drinking water to First Nations communities. So yeah, of course, when we don't believe in all the hysteria around climate change, that's not to say there aren't legitimate conservation issues and issues in our cities with air quality, all of these things that are more immediate that we can see. The problem with the climate change thing is it's very abstract. You can't see it directly. You can't experience it directly. I mean, people would say, "Oh, well, when a hurricane hits, now you're experiencing it directly." But no, I mean, it's not that direct. You can't. That's just an interpretation. Whereas the smog in Beijing is clearly the result of the factories and the automobiles. They can see that directly. It's not like that with climate change. It's all about raising taxes, raising government control. It's part of a big agenda. It's part of a new global religion. The whole green movement is part of a global religion. So anyways, this video has already gone on for a while. I'm not going to read all the rest of this, but they want to fix the situation with making dairy, poultry, and eggs more affordable. They claim that special interest groups are, jacking up the prices for ordinary Canadians. It's not something I know a lot on, so I'm not going to comment on that. I guess they want to respect legal firearms owners and target criminals. They want to do something for the veterans, but then everyone says they want to help the veterans. Yeah, there's nothing really. I don't see anything in their plan for veterans which stands out that much to me. A fair disability pension, review the new Veterans Charter, enshrine in legislation Canada's obligations to our veterans in a military covenant. Yeah, I mean, it all sounds nice, but I don't know. It's difficult for many veterans. That's all we can say. Many veterans struggle to get by. Post-traumatic stress disorder, health issues, suicide, economic hardship. It's a difficult situation. What I can tell you is that you must come from a different culture when you sign up and you believe in Canada. You believe that this is still Canada of old, where we fought in World War II and the flag meant something. To me, the Canadian flag is a tacky, silly, safe symbol. It has no real meaning to me. It was implemented during the 60s They got rid of the old, there was like the Union flag in it before, harkening back to the British Empire. So they got rid of that under the Pierre Trudeau's government, I believe, or around that time. So who likes the Canadian flag anyways? It's a silly flag. But anyways, so the veterans, they have two. I'm not trying to disrespect them. I just think it's great that they have that. I was going to say nationalism, but you could call that patriotism. Because nationalism has to do with your blood group and your people and your tribe, whereas patriotism is like loyalty to the flag, to the government. Their spirit is not matched by the people in power, by the corporations, by the people who send them to fight. Probably they couldn't care less about these veterans. So there's a lot more to read here, but I don't want to read the whole website to you. You can go and check it out for yourself. peoplespartyofcanada.ca, Maxime Bernier. Again, they've basically embraced all of these liberal ideals, a lot of stuff which doesn't work in my opinion, but then again, what else can you do? You got to take baby steps in the right direction. Who knows if anything would change if they actually got in power, but at least they're saying the right things, or making steps in that direction. Hasta luego, amigos. It's 1921. I'm marching in the sun. Ain't nowhere to run. The dregs of society. Multinational variety. Forget your notoriety. We'll overlook your sobriety. The Republic of France has given me a chance. Or perhaps it has unloaded me to die for a trifling fee. Je suis un légionnaire. La vie est temporaire. I'm a legionnaire. Hardship to bear. I'm a legionnaire. Stranded in nowhere. We got ambushed by the burgers.